Do you consider yourself a political comedian?
Yeah, I suppose I do. I don't think, like, again, that's just putting me in such a box. Like, you're trying to pigeonhole me there, I think. You know, there are so many, I think I have so much to offer as, you know, a pun comedian, as a writing comedian, as a sketching comedian. I think, you know, a gay comedian, a female comedian. You know, like there's a lot of strings to this bow. I think the wankier way of describing it is calling yourself a satirist. And you really can't do that in Australia. Except at parties on the North Shore with, you know, the wine glasses are weird shapes. And I've never been to them. So I can't.
So in order to not put you in too much of a box, can I call you a human?
Yes. But again, I don't want to, you know, I don't want the dogs.
An organism?
Yeah. I think a matter. What about matter?
Okay, do you consider yourself a matter?
I do consider myself a matter.
Does political comedy come naturally, or is it something that you have to decide on and build up to?
I think, like, in a way, it's actually an easier form of comedy. I think the problem is actually the incentive to write a lot of political comedy is low because it's not universal and it doesn't last very long. Oh, and Kevin Rudd did this silly thing. It's almost quite analytical. It's just a question of saying, okay, well, you think this about climate change. Why is that silly? Well, you behave in this way, you silly man. You dress in this manner.
Well, a lot of political comedy tends to be quite left-leaning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
It's not surprising in a lot of ways because I think educated people tend to be quite left-leaning. Like, in general, people who would like the world to change and move in a progressive direction, which inevitably involves change. It involves, say, money being shared more equally, or people who've been fucked over and ignored being treated in a more equal fashion. Those people tend to be left-wing. So I think a lot of comedians are left-wing because ultimately most comedians have quite strong views about the world and often, like, at their core, are trying to change the world or at least try to make people think. Rainforest Alliance certified. It tastes like a rainforest. Actually.
Some people would think that's a positive thing.
They would.
I bet you my green tea tastes more like rainforest than your black tea.
There's only one way to really know that. Here we go. Oh, that is quite like a rainforest. Whew. That's Amazonian.
Can you taste the lima? What do you think is good fodder for political comedy?
Everything can potentially be good fodder. It's one of the reasons why political comedy is kind of a problematic label in a way, because often what you're actually talking about is social commentary. I think a lot of people think politics is stuff that Tony Abbott and Kevin Rudd and Julia Gillard say. But I think the more interesting stuff and the more accessible stuff when it comes to political comedy is stuff that's actually about who people are and the fucked up ways in which other people see them. Being a gay comic, talking about homophobia or talking about the stupid little reactions a lot of people have are actually lots of good little insights into how people actually see gay people. You got bubble shoes.
Yeah, well, they're studs, maybe?
No, it's very sturdy. And look, you've worn them down.
I have.
How do you do that? You rub them against cats. I think I still feel to a degree that in some rooms homosexuality can put people off, even though that's silly, because there are a lot of gay comedians who kind of talk about it. But I do think it is not as easy to talk about it. And I know that feels like, well, Josh Thomas has done it and Tom Ballard has done it, and those guys are both great. And I still think it's not quite as easy. Like, audiences are naturally put on guard a tiny bit. Yeah.
Well, when you're talking about, you know, like homosexuality and other such, you know, slightly more taboo topics, what are some things that people think are okay to say, but just really, really aren't? People who might, you know, think that it's okay to talk to you in a certain way, and you're just like, hang on, That's not cool.
But people congratulating you on getting into relationships or on having longer relationships. Oh, you've been seeing one for 3 months. Good for you. That's great. Like, because it kind of reinforces like a stereotype that exists to a degree, but is also bullshit. Oh, people introducing gay friends. Hey, this is Toby. He's gay. You're gay. Why don't you guys be friends? People sometimes treat it as a novelty when it's not. We're just people.
Yeah.
And treating any other person like they're just a thing. It's with people who aren't as common as other kinds of people, treating them like they're not as common as other kinds of people is rude because that already happens.
Alternatively, what are some things that people, think that are bad to say that you actually don't care about? That's not really a big deal.
Right. I think most bad words really shouldn't be. But I think those words are powerful and have the ability to provoke conversations about things. Does that make sense? I think it's a distinction between subject matter and target.
Yeah.
And I think if you're targeting someone who is vulnerable or who's been fucked over for a whole variety of reasons, you're probably a bad person and you probably haven't thought it through. You have the right to tell the rape joke, and then everyone else has the right to say, you are a fuckwit for telling that horrible joke, and to write blog posts calling you a piece of shit and articles calling you a piece of shit, and that's the deal.
Can you generate social change from comedy?
No.
Okay, thanks. Nice talking.
I should probably flesh that one out. All comedy relies upon shared assumptions with the audience and playing with those shared assumptions or that shared knowledge. So if someone already has, say, a view about asylum seekers, then you can tweak it at the edges. You can, make someone laugh at the absurdity of someone they disagrees with position. That's very, very easy. You can maybe make them think a little bit differently about the issue. But at its core, what they think about that is defined by a whole bunch of media they consume, by the people around them, by how they've been raised, by their attitudes to outsiders and their experiences with dealing with different ethnic groups. And so actually changing, say, someone who opposes asylum seekers coming here from being, fuck asylum seekers, yeah, let them in, through comedy, it just isn't something you can do. And it's not its purpose. Its purpose is to entertain and to kickstart that conversation and to provide an end to that conversation.